You were not born to feel numb. You were born to feel it all, so deeply that even silence should know your name. We've been taught that to survive this world, we must become tough, hard, untouchable. That to protect ourselves from pain, we must learn to stop feeling so much. So we bury the tears, mute the anger, swallow the joy before it ever gets too loud. We say, "I'm fine," when we're crumbling. We smile, even when our soul is silent. And slowly, slowly, we begin to vanish. Numbness feels like safety because it quiets the noise inside us. But it's not safety. It's erasure. You don't disappear in one moment. It's not sudden. It's slow, like a light dimming 1 degree at a time, until one day you wake up and realize you've forgotten what warmth feels like. You're still breathing, yes, but you're no longer living. It starts with little choices. You avoid the phone call because you're too tired to feel rejected again. You scroll instead of speak because real connection might open something vulnerable in you. You ignore the ache in your chest because feeling it might mean facing what you've been running from. And in doing so, you lose more than emotion. You lose you. There was a time you felt everything. As a child, you laughed without shame. You cried without apology. You danced without music. You screamed when something hurt. You embraced life with wide arms and a naked heart. But life taught you that feeling came with consequences. That if you cried too long, people would leave. That if you loved too hard, you'd get hurt. That if you showed pain, you'd be seen as weak. So you stopped. You armored up. And now the armor is your skin. But here's what they don't tell you. When you shut out pain, you also shut out joy. When you silence grief, you muffle love. When you numb fear, you deaden passion. You cannot selectively go numb. You either feel it all or you feel nothing at all. And when you choose numbness, you begin a slow disappearance from your own soul. You stop recognizing yourself. You don't know what excites you anymore. You don't know what you need to feel okay. You laugh, but it's hollow. You rest, but never feel restored. You look in the mirror and don't see a stranger. You see someone you used to know, and you wonder where you went. You wonder when the real you disappeared. The truth is, you don't lose yourself in one blow. You fade, and you fade because you stopped letting yourself feel. But feeling isn't dangerous. Disconnection is. When you disconnect from your emotions, you disconnect from your instincts. You disconnect from your power. You disconnect from your story. You might think you're protecting yourself, but what you're really doing is abandoning yourself. And let's be honest, the world encourages it. It tells you to stay busy, hustle harder, don't think too much, don't feel too much, be productive, be pleasant, be numb. You are rewarded for being silent, for holding it all together, for keeping your emotions neat and hidden. But the price of that praise is your peace. You can't taste life when you're numb. You can't touch the miracle of the moment if your skin is wrapped in indifference. You can't experience love if your heart is locked in a box marked "Do Not Disturb." And you can't hear the call of your own soul if all you ever do is silence its cries. Numbness is not safety, it's suffocation. It doesn't guard you from pain, it delays it, buries it, turns it into something heavier. And the longer you stay numb, the harder it becomes to return to yourself. But let me tell you something else, it is never too late. You can feel again. You can cry again and not break. You can laugh and actually mean it. You can sit with yourself without fear. You can take the armor off. Yes, it will hurt at first. Yes, emotions will flood in like a storm. But that storm will wash you clean. It will remind you that you are alive, that your heart still beats, that your soul still wants to speak. You don't need to disappear to be safe. You need to reappear to be free. And it starts by giving yourself permission to feel. We live in a world that worships logic, that tells you to think your way through everything, that values intellect over intuition, clarity over chaos, and answers over honesty. So when you feel something rise up in you, a pain, a fear, a longing, the first thing you're told to do is analyze it, break it down, figure it out. Why are you feeling this way? Where did it come from? What's the reason? But here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. Some feelings don't come with explanations. Some feelings don't knock politely and explain themselves. They arrive like a storm and they demand to be felt, not fixed. We are so afraid of sitting in the unknown, of being confused, of not having all the answers neatly packaged. So we rush past our emotions, trying to decode them before we've even let ourselves experience them. But healing doesn't begin with understanding. Healing begins with allowing. You cannot make peace with a feeling you have not allowed to speak. You cannot soothe an ache you have not acknowledged. You cannot learn from pain you refuse to sit with. You must feel first. Let the emotion pass through your body like weather. Let it move you, shake you, still you. Let it do whatever it came to do. There is wisdom in the wave, but only if you stop resisting it. You don't need to name the feeling right away. You don't need to dissect it or explain it. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is feel something without trying to make it make sense. Because emotions are not problems to solve, they are messages. They are messengers of the soul, and not every message will be clear in the moment. Not every emotion will present itself in clean language. Sometimes grief shows up dressed as anger. Sometimes fear wears the face of apathy. Sometimes joy arrives so loudly you almost push it away because you've forgotten how to hold it. But if you keep demanding understanding first, you'll never allow these feelings to show you what they're really made of. And the truth is, your body always knows before your mind catches up. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the energy shift even when no one said a word? Have you ever met someone and just known they weren't safe? Even when everything looked fine on the outside, that's your body feeling before understanding. That's your intuition leading. That's truth rising before logic tries to tame it. But we've been conditioned to override that. We've been told that feelings are unreliable, messy, inconvenient, that unless we can explain them, we shouldn't trust them, that if we cry and don't know why, we're unstable, that if we get angry and can't justify it, we're irrational, that if we feel deeply but can't articulate it, we must be broken. So we shove it down, bury it. We wait until we have all the facts. But emotions don't operate on your timeline. They don't wait for clarity before they erupt. And they don't disappear just because you ignore them. They hide, they harden, they become something heavier. That's why people carry so much weight in their hearts, because they keep trying to process feelings they've never even fully felt. They want closure without vulnerability. They want peace without pain. They want answers without questions. But healing is not a clean journey. It is wild and wide and deeply personal. And it begins the moment you stop needing to know and start learning how to feel. Feeling is the doorway to transformation. When you feel fully, something inside you begins to shift. You soften, you open, you break, and then you bloom. You discover a kind of truth that cannot be taught, only lived. And in that living, you find your own way. You find wisdom not from books, not from lectures, not from perfect logic, but from your body, your breath, your breaking open. Don't fear the feeling. Fear what happens when you stop letting yourself have them. That is the true danger. To become so obsessed with understanding that you lose your ability to feel altogether, that you become a shell of yourself, high-functioning, well-explained, and deeply disconnected. Let the tears come before you can say why. Let the laughter bubble up, even if it feels random. Let the anger rise, not to hurt anyone, but to free what's been buried too long. Let the joy in, even if you're afraid it won't last. That's where the healing begins, in the raw, wild, unedited truth of emotion. You don't need a perfect explanation to be allowed to feel something. You don't need a thesis to justify your tears. Sometimes feeling it is the understanding, and that is more than enough. We've been taught to mistrust our emotions, to silence them, to avoid them. We grow up hearing things like, don't be so sensitive, get over it, stop crying, control your feelings. And slowly, we begin to believe that emotions are a weakness, a liability, something to push down, hide, or ignore. But emotions are not your enemy. They are your compass. They are not the storm. You are the sky, and emotions are the winds that move you, guide you, and show you where to look. What if every feeling that rises inside you came with a message, a direction, a whisper from your soul? What if your sadness wasn't a flaw but a signal? What if your anger wasn't something to suppress but something to listen to? What if your joy wasn't frivolous but sacred? When something feels off, your body knows. When something is deeply right, your body sings. But we override those signals every day. We rationalize, we excuse. We tell ourselves to stay calm, to stay quiet, to not make a scene. But ignoring your emotional compass will only leave you lost in places that look safe but feel wrong. The truth is, emotion is energy in motion. It's movement, it's life. When you suppress it, you become stagnant. You start drifting. You start agreeing to things your soul never said yes to. You start living in ways that betray your own truth, not because you don't know better, but because you've forgotten how to listen. Emotions are the language of the soul. They are the first voice you ever knew. Long before you had words, you had feelings. You cried when you were hurt. You laughed when you were full of joy. You screamed when something felt wrong. You reached out when you needed love. That was pure guidance, instinctual, true, unfiltered. But the world convinced you it was too much. So now when you feel pain, you numb. When you feel joy, you minimize. When you feel anger, you deny. And what happens? You stop trusting yourself. You start relying on outside voices to tell you what to do. You look for approval instead of alignment. You follow paths that make sense on paper but leave your heart aching. And you wonder why peace feels so far away. But your emotions have never stopped speaking. You've just stopped listening. That anxiety that spikes around certain people, it's not random. That sadness that lingers after certain choices, it's not meaningless. That spark of excitement when you dream of something more, it's not silly. These are not interruptions. These are instructions. Your emotions don't need to be fixed. They need to be followed. That doesn't mean letting your feelings control you. It means letting them inform you. There is a difference. When you treat emotions like enemies, you either avoid them or drown in them. But when you treat emotions like allies, you learn to read them, to navigate by them, to let them lead you home. Anger is not a problem. It's a boundary detector. It tells you where something crossed a line. It shows you what matters. It says, pay attention here. Sadness isn't a weakness. It's grief making its way through you, honoring what was lost, revealing what was loved. It slows you down so you can process, reflect, and soften. Fear isn't always a warning to run. It's often an invitation to grow. It says, you're on the edge of something new. And joy is not just a treat. It's direction. It's your soul's way of saying, more of this, please. When you honor your emotions, you reclaim your inner compass. You stop outsourcing your decisions. You stop waiting for someone else to tell you what's right. You know because you feel it. And that knowing, quiet, clear, deep, is the foundation of every powerful, aligned life. It's time to stop apologizing for feeling. It's time to stop fearing the rise of emotion like it's a storm sent to destroy you. Emotion is not destruction, it's direction. It doesn't show up to tear you down. It shows up to wake you up, to bring you back to your truth, to help you remember what matters. You don't need to shut down to stay safe. You don't need to hide your feelings to be strong. You don't need to dismiss your emotions to be rational. Real strength is feeling fully and choosing wisely. It's being able to say, "This is how I feel," without shame, and then asking, "What is this feeling showing me?" Because when you treat your emotions as your compass, you stop wandering, you stop settling, you start living with direction, intention, and heart. You begin to trust yourself again. And that trust is what leads you, not to a life that merely looks good, but to a life that feels like home. There's a truth most people spend their whole lives trying to outrun. You cannot heal what you refuse to feel. You can't move past the pain you've buried. You can't fix what you won't face. No matter how far you run, how hard you distract yourself, how many masks you wear, your wounds will wait. Because healing isn't passive. It doesn't happen because time passes. It happens when courage meets truth and you finally let yourself feel the very thing you swore you never would. We live in a world that glorifies the illusion of strength. This idea that to be strong means to be unaffected. But real strength is not in the pretending. It's not in the smiling through the storm or the silence in the face of heartbreak. Real strength is in the breaking, in the trembling voice that says, "This hurts," in the moment you stop running and start feeling. Because feelings don't disappear when you ignore them. They don't dissolve because you keep busy. They don't vanish just because you tell yourself, "I'm fine." What you don't feel, you store. What you don't release, you carry. The anger you suppress becomes tension in your jaw, tightness in your chest. The sadness you bury becomes fatigue, detachment, a constant weight pressing down on your soul. The grief you avoid becomes numbness, a disconnection from joy, a silence where your laughter used to be. You weren't meant to carry all that. You were never meant to stuff down your emotions and keep marching. You were meant to stop, to feel, to cry if needed, to scream if that's what it takes, to sit in silence and let the ache rise like a tide, not to drown you, but to cleanse you. But we don't give ourselves that permission. We fear feeling because we think it will break us. But feeling doesn't break you, it frees you. The pain you avoid becomes the cage you live in. But the moment you let yourself feel it, you open the door, you let the light back in, you start to breathe again. There is no shortcut to healing. There's no bypass around the emotional truth. You can't go over it, under it, or around it. You must go through it. You must walk into the fire of your pain and trust that you won't be consumed. You'll be transformed. That's where healing begins, not in the denial, but in the acknowledgement, not in the silence, but in the raw, messy honesty of, "This is what I feel and I'm not running anymore." You have to feel it to heal it. That sadness you've been trying to hide, it's the echo of something that mattered. That rage you keep suppressing, it's pointing to something sacred that was violated. That loneliness you won't admit, it's asking you to reconnect, not with others first, but with yourself. Your emotions are not enemies of healing. They are the gateway to it. They are the teachers. They are the trail markers that show you where the work needs to be done. When you finally feel what you've been avoiding, something sacred happens. You soften. You become more human, not less. You begin to see your pain not as a flaw, but as a part of your journey. You stop seeing yourself as broken and start seeing yourself as becoming. You start recognizing that healing doesn't mean erasing the pain. It means honoring it, learning from it, and letting it move through you so it doesn't define you. And healing isn't linear. It's not a straight line. Some days you'll feel like you've made it to the mountaintop. Other days you'll feel like you've slipped back into the valley. That's okay. That's part of the process. What matters is not perfection. It's permission. Permission to feel. Permission to fall apart. Permission to be exactly where you are without shame. Because shame silences healing. But truth sets it in motion. So don't numb it. Don't rush it. Don't force yourself to get over it. Give yourself the grace to feel every layer, every ache, every breathless moment. Sit with it, breathe through it. Listen to what your pain is trying to say, because deep within that pain, there's a message, a lesson, a new version of you waiting to rise, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. You are not weak for hurting. You are not broken for feeling. You are healing, and healing requires heart. It requires truth. It requires the kind of courage that doesn't always roar, but sometimes simply whispers, I will face this. And when you do, when you finally let yourself feel, you'll begin to touch something sacred inside you. Not just pain, not just sorrow, but strength, beauty, wholeness, the part of you that was never lost, just waiting to be remembered. Feeling is the thread that stitches your heart to every soul you've ever touched and every soul that's ever touched you. It is how love lingers long after the goodbye, how laughter still echoes even when the room is empty, how memories pulse with life even when time has carried the moment far away. You may think it's pain that reminds you of someone you've lost, but really, it's love that never left. It shows up as feeling, as emotion, as a sudden catch in your throat, the warmth that rises out of nowhere, the silence that feels too full to be empty. You don't stop loving someone because they're gone. The relationship may change form, but love is not so fragile that it dies with distance, death, or time. Love continues, and feeling is how it breathes, that ache in your chest, that sudden smile when their name crosses your mind, that moment you hear their favorite song and time slows. That's not a weakness, that's not a wound, that's love, alive and still reaching through you. Feeling is how you carry them with you. Feeling is how you say you mattered, you still do. We often try to numb ourselves to avoid the weight of grief. We shut down the feeling because we think it will consume us. But the truth is, feeling doesn't destroy, it connects. It connects you to what was real, what was sacred, what was shared. When you grieve, you honor love. When you feel sorrow, you prove the depth of your heart. Grief is not a punishment, it's a continuation of devotion. There are people who live in your blood now, people who shape the way you love, the way you speak, the way you see the world. They taught you things you'll never unlearn. They gifted you moments that time can't take. They held space in your life, and now they hold space in your soul. And when you let yourself feel them, you're not slipping backward. You're reaching inward. You're letting love rise again. There is a sacredness in feeling that can't be replicated. It transcends logic. It transcends language. It lets you remember in a way that words never could. You can close your eyes and suddenly you're there. The warmth of their embrace, the sound of their voice, the way they said your name, that's not fantasy. That's feeling doing its work. That's your heart proving that what's real never truly leaves. You don't have to move on to move forward. You don't have to forget to grow. You don't have to replace the love you lost, because you can't. What you can do is feel it. Let it wrap around you. Let it live in you. Let it shape you, not in sorrow alone, but in depth, in compassion, in gratitude. You feel because you loved. You feel because it mattered. You feel because something beautiful once bloomed in your life and its petals still brush against you now and then. And it's not just about those who are gone. Feeling connects you to those who are still here, too. It's what keeps love vibrant. It's what turns a moment into a memory. When you allow yourself to feel, truly feel, you become more present, more open, more alive. You listen better, you speak truer, you hug longer, you see people more clearly, you stop rushing through life and start experiencing it. Emotions are not distractions, they are bridges. They are how you hold hands with a past you can't relive and a future you can't predict. They are how you remain human in a world that so often asks you to become hard. They are how you keep the sacred, sacred, how you keep love alive. Don't be afraid of the tears. Don't be afraid of the moments when your breath catches in grief, when your heart aches in memory. That ache is proof you lived, you loved, and you still have the capacity to carry that love forward. Feeling keeps the connection alive. It lets the people you've lost remain a part of your becoming. They don't fade when you feel them, they rise. So if you ever wonder whether you're weak for still crying, still missing, still remembering, know this: you are not weak. You are still in relationship with love. You are still tethered to a soul that meant something to you, and that is nothing to hide from. That is something to bow to. Let yourself feel. Let the memories move you. Let the emotions rush through. Because through every tear, every smile, every breathless moment of remembrance, you're not just healing. You're reconnecting. You're saying, you still matter. You're still with me. And I will never forget how you made me feel. There is a reason you were born with a heart that beats louder when you're moved, eyes that water when you're touched, skin that tingles when something matters. You were never meant to float through life untouched, unfazed, unmoved. You were meant to live deeply, feel richly, love boldly, and break openly. But somewhere along the way, we were taught that feeling too much is dangerous, that being too emotional is a flaw, that sensitivity must be hardened, that softness must be hidden, that vulnerability must be cured. And so we dim, we detach, we put up walls to protect ourselves from the very thing we were designed to do, feel. But you cannot live fully while only feeling halfway. You cannot taste the sweetness of joy if you've numbed your heart to avoid pain. You cannot connect with others if you've silenced your own soul. And you cannot know who you are if you've spent your life shutting down every feeling that tries to show you. To feel fully is not a risk, it's a return to aliveness, a return to truth, a return to the raw, unfiltered pulse of what it means to be human. The world may teach you to keep it together, to keep it quiet, to keep it light. But your soul was made for depth, for presence, for passion. And the more you allow yourself to feel, really feel, the more you come alive. Feeling fully doesn't mean being dramatic or being ruled by emotion. It means being present enough to let each moment move through you without resistance. It means letting joy stretch wide across your chest, letting grief crash without apology, letting beauty break you open, and letting truth settle deep. It means honoring the message in every emotion, whether it comes with laughter or with tears. There are people who have lived decades but never really lived a day because they stopped feeling. They built lives that looked right but felt empty. They checked every box but never checked in with their own hearts, and you can see it in their eyes, in the way they talk around their dreams, in the way they avoid the silence, in the way they stay busy to outrun themselves. But life doesn't respond to performance, it responds to presence. And presence begins with feeling. Feeling fully is how you stay awake to your own life. It's how you know what matters to you. Not because someone told you, but because your spirit reacted, your body responded, your intuition stirred. Feeling is the conversation between your soul and your surroundings. And when you listen, you begin to live a life that belongs to you. You laugh harder when you let yourself feel freely. You love deeper when you let yourself be seen. You forgive easier when you allow yourself to process the pain. You create more beautifully when you let yourself bleed onto the page, onto the canvas, into the world. Feeling doesn't make you fragile, it makes you real, and realness is where freedom lives. To live fully is to risk being cracked open. Yes, you will feel pain. Yes, you will experience loss. Yes, there will be days when feeling everything feels like too much. But even in those moments, you will know you're alive. You'll know you're connected to something bigger than yourself. You'll know that your heart is still beating, not just biologically, but spiritually. We often chase things that we think will bring life, success, status, approval. But none of that can touch your soul if you're numb. You could have everything and still feel nothing, or you could have very little and still feel the sun warming your skin, the music stirring your bones, the love in someone's eyes, and the sacredness of this breath right here. Don't let the fear of feeling keep you from the gift of living. Don't shrink your joy because someone once called it too much. Don't silence your sadness because the world moves too fast to care. Don't hide your heart just because it has broken before. Broken things can still hold beauty. In fact, they often hold more. You don't need to wait until it's safe to feel. You don't need to have it all figured out to be present. You don't need to be unshaken to be whole. What you need is honesty, openness, willingness, the courage to sit with your heart in your hands and say, whatever this is, I won't run from it. Because when you feel fully, you give life permission to meet you fully. You open the door to connection, purpose, and joy. You stop living in the shadows of your own existence and step into the light of who you really are. Not numb, not distant, but vibrant, awake, alive. And isn't that the point of it all? Not just to exist, but to feel every sacred beat of being here.